1460 WVOX.
Stay tuned now for the Racing for Heroes radio show with host Brett Morash on 1460 WVOX.
All right, good morning, Racing for Heroes fans. So excited to be here today on November 20th. Just want to put one thing out there into the universe before we start the show. One of my colleagues is named Jimmy Sprecher, and he is one of the greatest people I know. We'll give you the shirt off his back. He's a drag car driver, but he's also one of our colleagues at Racing for Heroes. But we actually got a really nice note about Jimmy the other day, and I'm going to read it on the radio because it was so nice. He basically stopped and helped a mom whose car broke down in the middle of hinterlands of Virginia, and when all these other people were passing by. And it just shows you how good of a human that Jimmy is. So, and Jimmy, I know you're listening out there, but I'm going to read this anyway. And if you're embarrassed, too bad, because I know you're a humble guy and you deserve this. So the note goes, "Hi, what a wonderful cause you're dedicated to. I wanted to share that yesterday on the road to pick up my kids from school, I got a flat tire, and I started to jack up my vehicle only to find that there was no way I could loosen the lug nuts. At least 20 or more trucks passed me by and would not want one stop, but finally I called the sheriff's department to request a deputy come loosen them so I could finish changing my tire. While on the phone, a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Sprecher, from Chester pulled behind me and reassured me he would have me back on the road in minutes. Jimmy was such a blessing and a breath of fresh air. He restored my faith in humanity in that moment. He loosened all the lug nuts, proceeded to finish jacking up the vehicle, and completely changed the tire for me, and I only asked him that he loosen the lug nuts. Jimmy is a gentleman, respectful of my space and situation, and so kind. He was blessed by one of your own yesterday, and I will be forever grateful that there are still great people to help a neighbor in need rather than looking the other way. And if you could tell Jimmy thank you, you're truly impacted. What was not a so good day turned into be a blessed day," and then a little heart. So anyway, Jimmy, that's for you. I just want you to know you are one of my favorite people. And if everyone could be a little bit of Jimmy every day, I think that would be great. So anyway, so on to our guest. So we're going to introduce our guest, but I got a little music to play for him before he comes on as well. So Ian Bradbury is a former Canadian Forces Army officer. And in his post-military work, he has been devoted to peacekeeping operations all around the globe, primarily helping people who are child soldiers and the impacts of war. So I would start this by saying hand salute. And Alex, if you'd please go ahead and play the music, I would appreciate it. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. All right, Ian, are you still on? Oh, ready to drop your hand salute if you're saluting. So, Ian, are you on the line?
I am on the line. Good morning to you, Brett.
Good morning, Ian. And I thought you'd appreciate us playing "Oh Canada." It's Veterans Day for us, but I know it was Armistice Day for you all last week. So thank you for all you do and being such great allies of the United States.
Cheers, brother. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and our guys in the booth back there are really excited that they got to play some theme music for one of my guests. So I appreciate it. So, Ian, I've known you probably, I think, a couple of years now, and I'm always impressed with, the work that you're doing internationally. But if you could tell us a little bit, like, Ian Bradbury, young kid from Canada, goes and joins the Canadian Forces. Tell us about that.
Well, I was a young fella growing up on the east coast of Canada, on the island of Newfoundland. I had been in the Air Cadet program that's can start when you're 12 years old. You finish when you're 18, kind of similar to some of the cadet programs you have down in the States. And upon completion of that and graduation of high school, I wanted to join, and I particularly wanted to join the infantry, and I had a lot of people telling me not to. I had a lot of people wanting me to go officer training, particularly take my commission or something along that line.
Sure.
But no, I had not non-com infantry in my mind, and that's exactly what I did. So it was pretty fantastic of an experience to go from basic training at the time to quals in Meaford, Ontario, and then getting posted to 3rd Battalion Royal Canadian Regiment.
Oh, that's cool. And where is 3rd Battalion Royal Canadian Regiment? Where is that located?
3rd Battalion is in Petawawa, Ontario.
Okay.
A couple hours northwest of where I am now.
Oh, Roger. And I'm assuming that that's like a storied regiment, like they fought all the way back to Ypres or something like that back in World War I, right?
It's an old regiment. It started on the 21st of December, 1883. In fact, we were the first Canadian infantry regiment.
Oh, wow.
So we go all the way back. We got battle honors through World War I, World War II, Korea, and modern day.
Oh, it does go back farther. And so I'm assuming they're now. I think the Canadian forces use our similar M16 to ours, right? That's true, right?
Yeah, we use a standard C7. It's pretty much an M4.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And so I think we'll just preemptively talk about this. But you had a chance to actually deploy as a peacekeeper, right, to Bosnia, I believe it was.
Did Roto 8 in the former Yugoslavia, Bosnia at the time. That was a fantastic go too.
Yeah, and can you just describe like that peacekeeping operation, and we'll talk a little bit about Canada's role in that too. Maybe is I think that you and I have discussed in the past that one of the upsides of Canada is not only are they the best military in their weight class, but they are because they don't have any kind of natural enemies, I guess, in the way that the United States does. They're very much often thought of as an honest broker when they're able to go do peacekeeping missions in support of the UN mission or something else.
Absolutely. Well, Roto 8 was a NATO mission for us. It was still under the peacekeeping hat. We did receive the Canadian Peacekeeping Service Medal for our Roto on that one. That was 2001. The majority of what was getting dealt with at the time was ensuring the disarmament of any of the militias was actually, had gone through after those years, dealing with various organized crime elements and just kind of the leftovers that exist in a post-conflict space, and making sure that stability is maintained. You kind of nailed it with the Canadian piece. For many years, we were referred to as a peacekeeping force, but I'd say we're more of a stability operations force. We bridge the gap very well between conflict operations and peacekeeping operations. It's a pretty natural fit for Canada, and we do a lot of civil-military integration operations. We do a lot of those pieces really well, as the force training elements is another piece that we do well. So, proud of the Canadian forces, particularly proud of the infantry and what we've managed to do over the past 20 years since I joined, or 22 years since I joined now. Wow.
You're getting old, Ian.
But go ahead.
You're getting old.
Starting to.
That's okay. Infantry's a young man's game. Everyone knows that.
That it is.
Yeah. So, but I think it's important though, because really at the end of the day, and I think everyone who looks at the U.S. military knows that we really have no peer competitor on the battlefield. And if you're I teach at Norwich University as an adjunct, and we always talk about sort of phase 2 shaping the battlefield, or phase 3 combat operations, but it's really that kind of spin down piece where you're going from major combat operations to trying to get civil authority to take over, where things are still at very high risk, but you still want to get to civil authority taking the role as quickly as possible. And that's really what Canada's kind of, I think, gift to the world is with respect to peace stability operations.
Absolutely. Even in the most recent Iraqi theater, we've seen Canada go in there with the coalition and do some really strong works within, that particular space of bridging civ-mil operations. And the training piece, again, Canada has done a fantastic training role in Iraq. And, it is that, coming in between those hard operations and the peacekeeping side that we really, really shine. We're hard warriors. We, our forces all across the board held down very well in Afghanistan. Even prior to that, we did quite a darn good job across Haiti, Eritrea, Kosovo. We've been involved all along in those sort of things. So we've got the ability to really span, and I think that speaks highly of the type of training that our force does, as well as the recruitment. Right,
and you actually, and of course, Canada has its own, border challenges, not necessarily to the south, but really to the north with the Northwest Passage. And if I'm not mistaken, you actually have a group of folks called, I think they're called Rangers as well, but they're basically like National Guardsmen if they were Americans, that are alone and unafraid in the far wastelands of the north, protecting Canadian sovereignty.
Very, very much so. The Canadian Rangers are a storied unit, very highly made up of Indigenous persons. They do a fantastic job for us keeping that northern shield in check, and there's some pretty hardened individuals to be able to spend the time up in that cold and to be able to survive the way that they do.
No, these guys, I mean, they always seem to me like to be like the toughest guys in the world, because they're dealing with some pretty extreme conditions, and they're dealing with like polar bears and other sorts of things that can kill you in the environment as alone and unafraid. And I'm assuming every once in a while that must happen to them. Is that they end up on the wrong end of that. But and of course, with the melting of the Arctic, that is a bigger and bigger issue, I think, for Canada, is, defending that northern border and sort of the exclusive economic zone that kind of goes northward from there.
Oh, I'd say the whole alliance, the traditional alliance, is definitely keeping an eye to that whole Arctic sovereignty piece, and the opening of the waterways up there and the transiting. I actually, for a little while there, in between what I'm doing now, I was working with Transport Canada in the Maritime Security Division, and spent quite a bit of my time with eyes looking north as to what was happening as that Northwest Patches has been opening up.
Yeah, it's very real, and even in the U.S. Right now, we're sort of wringing our hands because the United States Coast Guard is down to one heavy icebreaker that can deal with the Arctic weather, and because the other one had an engine fire and they haven't got it back online yet. So, these things are very serious business, and I think at the end of the day, we tend to forget our northern neighbors, are a very capable military, and they have a lot of things that they have to deal with. So, but let's go on to what you're doing now, Ian. So, I know you kind of you moved off into NATO stability operations and the first NAF, which I know used to be an acronym, but isn't so much now. So tell me about your nonprofit and what you guys are trying to do.
For sure. Well, I've got a couple main jobs. I've got a couple side things that I'm involved with. The two main jobs is with the first NAF as well as Terra Nova Strategic Management. It's a consulting side. But on the first NAF side, during the rise of Islamic State, their rise in Syria and their carryover into Iraq, I was doing some monitoring of that at the time. And I started seeing a pretty major problem that was unfolding, and particularly that was Westerners getting themselves involved in it, particularly to go over and fight.
Right.
And the challenge that I was seeing, Brett, is that they didn't know the region. They didn't know any of the people they were dealing with. They didn't really even know what they were getting into in a lot of cases. And a lot of them were setting themselves up for some pretty bad goes, up to and including some of them were talking to ISIS fronts.
Yep.
Right. So at that time, we figured, okay, something needs to get done, and we didn't really have time to get all the proper permissions in place. So we launched what was effectively an information operations campaign, and that was to get all those guys paying attention to us rather than anybody else.
Right.
Now, at the same time, though, while we had that running, we actually did have teams on the ground. They were conducting some pretty advanced analysis of what the response was to the crisis at the time, particularly up in through the Yazidi space that had just been hit by the genocide and the humanitarian response to that. So we managed to get some pretty great reports out, got some good stuff into the Canadian government. One of our reports ended up leading to the creation of what was called the Canadian Yazidi Action Council.
That's amazing.
And that ended up seeing the Yazidi genocide formally recognized in the Canadian House of Commons, and then Canada committed over $300 million to Iraqi aid shortly after that. So feeling pretty amazing about how those pieces came along. But we run multiple programs in the Iraqi space. So we did one, Help Save Hanan Salo, young girl who's still in need of some assistance there, Yazidi girl. We've got the Lost Boys of the 21st Century program that's still ongoing. I did a TEDx on that a couple years back, and still pressing that. Hopefully, we can chat a little bit more. Yeah, sure. And we've also got some medical programs that we've been running in Africa. And just last summer, I supported a major 22-country PhD research project. That's amazing. Yeah, and listen, I mean, $300 million, even if it's Canadian dollars with the exchange rate, is still a lot of money. That's still a lot of money. I'm just kidding. No, that's a lot of money. And I think you're right, though. I mean, when you look at things like the rise of ISIS, you have to also say to yourself, the people that are fighting that, the ISIS soldier at the tip of the spear that's being pushed forward, they're listening to people
that are basically telling them to do that, and that's their option. And I think that's one of the things that's so important about your Lost Boys project, right? Is because there are a ton of programs out there for young women that are affected by war, but not so much of the fighters, not so much of the young people, the young men and women, the young men that are dragged into these conflicts, and that have to be, for lack of a better term, deprogrammed to kind of join, the secular world, or even if they're, staying where they are, that they're not going to take up arms and just randomly kill people. So, volley to you.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a critical gap, Brett. In the Iraqi space that we were working, in one of the areas that we were looking, there were 26 various programs for women and girl victims. Fantastic, extremely supportive of it, and I'm very happy to see it. In that exact same space, there are 0 programs for young boys.
Yep.
Even not even speaking of those ones who were fighters or combatants or dealing with that de-radicalization end. Some of the ones that were sexually assaulted, up to including rape in some cases. Some that were physically assaulted.
Yep.
Some that witnessed the murders or even rapes of the females of their family, and they have 0 access. There's nothing for them.
No, and then you're creating the next generation of fighters, right? Because in reality, it's like talking about 9/11. I mean, 9/11 was 19 plus years ago, and those kids that were born then are now getting to, if they're not already at fighter age, they're right there. And what are we doing, I think, collectively as a world to prevent them from being radicalized?
Well, massive vulnerability in that space. It's, I just recently heard a new presentation from the UN where they had gone and looked at the gender elements of it. That most recent research turned up the exact same findings as our team did a couple years prior. And still, I actually asked the presenter, do you know of any programs that have been implemented for the young boys?
Yeah.
He said, I don't know of any. And, it's something that we continually push on. But the truth is, Brett, we haven't received the background support to actually make it happen. We've got all the structures in place. We've got frameworks. We've got various scales, risk assessments. We've got multiple different potential models that could be put in place depending on the specific circumstance of the individual. We just don't have the support and backing to do it.
No, and I think that's why it's important to talk about that, because as I think we've discussed in the past, is that it is important to deal with the young women that are impacted by war, but it's equally important to help the young men that are as well, and making sure that they're able to have long and productive lives as well, where they're not taking up arms against people, where they're not joining terrorist organizations, where they're not adversely affecting the women that are in their circles. So I applaud what you're doing.
Cheers. Thank you very much. The cycles of violence are so strong. If you've been victimized at a young age and traumatized at extreme levels, and you don't receive care, you don't receive treatment, but you see other people in your community receiving the care and treatment that you need, there's definitely going to be resentment building there. Yeah. And as these young men become older, you're exactly right, and it breaks my heart, but they most likely will return to various cycles of violence and either cause violence against others or take up arms in some extreme violence.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why I applaud your efforts. And then, because I think you're actually also part of the Children Recruited by Terrorist Groups run by our friend Cecilia Polizzini as well.
Polizzi, yes, Cecilia Polizzi, I am. So the 3 side things that I do, I was actually originally the co-chair on that group. Since it's moved to the U.S. and become a U.S. 501c3, I've just taken on a participant's role. I'm also a council member for the International Council on Climate and Security, or International Military Council on Climate and Security, IMCCS. And I'm also a survey leader for United Against Slavery. So it's pretty busy times across that particular niche. So if it fits the stability operations niche, if it fits the, defense and conflict space piece, we're involved in it some way, somehow, and even with the counter-violent extremism works. Yeah,
that's amazing. And what kind of funds all that stuff for you? Because I think the 501c3s in the U.S. are a little different than nonprofits in Canada, right?
Yeah, they're a little bit different. So you guys, we're set up as a nonprofit in Canada rather than a charity. Charities are pretty much the same as the 501c3 that you'd see, where you can give charitable receipts and stuff.
Yeah.
Truth is, all our work to date has been self-funded by myself and the team members.
Yeah.
With no external. So anytime we see an op come up, the team gets on a call, we look at it, we decide whether or not we can do it, what it's going to cost us, we pull all our resources together and make it happen.
That's amazing, and I can't thank you enough, because I think you guys are making an impact. And if people do want to donate to you, where can they go anywhere and help? Or
Yeah, right through our website, first, www.onenaef.org. There's a part there where they can make a donation to us through, I believe it's set up through PayPal and through our accounts there. That one's set up.
Great.
Otherwise, if they want to get a hold of us for some kind of specific project or anything like that, it's just as easy as sending us an email, and we do have a couple different organizations in the U.S. that we work with, so if it needs to go through a 501 or anything like that to work, we can make stuff happen that way, too.
Yeah, and I think we're allied in that way, too, obviously, as, Racing for Heroes.
Yeah.
We're definitely on brand with each other. And then tell us about the International Military Committee on Climate and Security. I think we touched on a little bit with the Northern Territories, Nunavut, border with the Northwest Passage, but, what are you doing on that?
So IMCCS, it's a collective of military leaders from mostly NATO nations who have a background in risk analysis or various types of criticality assessment and critical infrastructure protection. And we're working with various climate scientists from universities across the UK, the US, across Europe, and we're helping bring a security focus to the climate discussion. So rather than speaking of climate as a security threat, actually looking at what the real threats are that are coming from it. So if we're looking at increased floods in certain areas, what are the mitigation and safeguard measures that have to go in place to actually deal with what we're seeing now? Not just that reducing climate impacts, that's very important, as well as, some of the transitions to different energy sources, that's very important, but really looking at what do we have to do to deal with the impacts that we're seeing now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I pay attention to things like the Maldives, which is being inundated, because the highest land, I think there is like 9 feet above sea level. And you're about ready to see nations that are gone, like they are absolutely gone, and that'll be that. And here in New York, of course, we are seeing, the weather effects, of climate change, and I think that the current year, where I never thought I'd have to learn this many Greek letters of the alphabet with hurricanes, here we are at iota and theta. So that stuff all matters.
That's right. No, it's a very important thing. There's a lot of challenge in the discussion. There's a lot of conflicting opinions, interpretations. Even some of the science on it's conflicting, and we want to come right up the middle of that and say, these are the points that we can all agree on. These are the things that we need to address immediately. Let's get it done.
Yep. So, Ian, we're actually getting toward the back end of our show here. We got about 3 minutes left. And, of course, as I think Racing for Heroes is about automotives. So we always have to talk about that. And I know that you got to drive a Grizzly, which is an armored vehicle, with a really cool Canadian name for it. Because I think you got like a Husky and all these other kind of cool names. Cougar is, I think, another one. But you got to drive a Grizzly, and something bad happened to the engine, if I'm not mistaken.
It did. Yeah, I was a driver for an AVGP Grizzly. That's a 6-wheel drive. It's often referred to as the LAV-1. Definitely date me there. It's got a beautiful 275 horsepower Detroit diesel,
nice.
2-cycle turbocharged sitting in it. And we were in Bosnia. We were going up a fairly steep back road, and the boat, we call them boats because they're floatable, was having a bit of a hard time getting up over the hill. And anybody that's driven them knows that if you feather the throttle a couple times and wind up that turbo and then stomp on it, it gives it a nice good punch. Yep. So the crew commander, sort of yelled down to me from the hatch to get the boat up over the hill. So I gave it a couple feathers and stomped on it. And when I did, I would have swore that a rocket hit the side of us. Quite loud bang, smash, boom. And it turns out that I had imploded the air filter right straight down through the engine.
Amazing.
It turned into a full vehicle recovery operation, and myself and the other driver ended up spending the next week doing a full engine replacement while on tour.
Well, listen, as I put out on LinkedIn, not everyone can say that they got a grizzly to eat an airbox. Of course, I didn't elaborate exactly what that meant, but that's amazing. And I don't know, you had another story, but I think it was somewhat classified. I wasn't sure if you were able to share that with us.
Well, there was a time out there as well that we were rolling around. It was a quick reaction force call that we had gotten out, and during that we had ended up down a road that wasn't on the plan. And when we turned around to get out of there was a nice shiny red Alfa Romero parked right in the middle of the roadway.
Oh, amazing.
So with a quick call up commander's hatch, and go for it. There wasn't much after that Alfa Romero at the end of it. I got in a little bit of trouble for it because it was a local police chief's brother, and they sent the bill to NATO, and NATO ended up having to pay the bill for that Alfa Romero.
Oh, that's amazing. No, it's like a Sergeant Major of the Army Tilley's story the other day where, he used a tank and he drove over a new Mercedes in Vietnam. So I guess that's the thing with you guys.
Yeah, that's it. That's us Army non-coms down in our younger age. I guess when you give us a big metal thing to drive around like that, sometimes we got to drive over stuff.
That's right, brother. Hey, Ian, listen, I'm so sorry. I got to let you go. I'll call you later. But listen, thanks so much. Once again, thank you, Ian. Canadian Forces, and just great human. And if you are interested in what they do, please go look at their website. It's the number one, NAEF.com. Just superhumans. They're doing great work, and I'm truly appreciative of everything Ian and his crew have done. So thank you. And with that, Racing for Heroes, we're getting to the end of the show. We're about ready to go into our theme song to bring us out of here. But please take a look at our website, www.racingforheroes.org. And this is Racing for Heroes Radio on 1460 in your AM dial or worldwide at WVOX.com. Thanks, everyone, and have a fantastic day.